Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I am NateFNGreat. Welcome to this edition of The Game Changer. I'm being joined here, as always, by the lovely, very talented, and ever so extraordinarily beautiful VictoriBelle. How's it going today?
It's good. It's good. I was thinking, I don't even know how to, answer in medieval, jargon. Good day, or something. It's not even correct. That's not how they talk. I'm just gonna go Old English on you.
Yeah, it works. It works. So, reason why she mentions that is because of the fact that in about 24 hours, we're actually going to be heading to the Medieval Times dining and tournament that is happening in Chicago this Saturday night. And honestly, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I realize that for some people that are wrestling fans, they are probably saying, but Nate, NXT TakeOver is during that time. Well, you know something, sometimes you just got to make small sacrifices to have a little bit of fun. So I will be missing out on that, but I will be enjoying a wonderful time at a wonderful place with a wonderful person. So I think it makes up for that. So we thought that with Medieval Times that we would base this episode on some medieval facts, some medieval stories. This is going to be a bit of more jolly old English, very royal-esque type of episode where, like I said, we'll talk about medieval facts, stories, everything that you can kind of think about, because we kind of have to realize that the medieval times is a really cool time zone to really talk about, and honestly one of the most successful series of all times up until the very end, from what I've been told, is indeed based on the medieval times. So we'll get into that, guys, a little bit later on and throughout the show. So if it's alright with you, VictoriBelle, I would love to kind of start off this with a little bit of a funny fact that I find here from kickassfacts.com, because I'm sorry, this is just too good to even to basically even not start off the deal with, especially when it comes from somebody like that. So this is the number one fact from their list. So if you ever want to check out some really great lists, guys, go check out kickassfacts.com. For this one, they have a top 40 deal. I'm only going to go through a few of them. I'm not going to list all 40 of them because that would just be insanity. But the first thing that they have on here is that there is a medieval unit of measurement called butt for wine. And it follows up with this sentence: a buttload of wine is 129 gallons. To which I read that the first time and I almost cried laughing at that, just being like, oh my gosh, that's funny. A buttload of wine. That's, nowadays that probably it means something completely different, but 129 gallons, that's a lot of wine. Holy cow.
That's a buttload. but no, that's funny because I've heard of a buttload before, but I didn't know it was actually an actual measured amount. So that's funny. So I've been wrong whenever I said that's a buttload of anything, because I bet it's not that much.
Yeah. And I'll get another one out of the way. And we kind of complain about the fact, we don't get enough sleep, we don't get enough rest and stuff like that. Here's what's kind of funny. In the medieval period, it was common for them to have 2 sleep periods in a night. You would fall asleep for about 4 to 5 hours and wake up for 2 hours, or so, and fall back to the sleep, and then sleep for another 3 hours. And it's been suggested that we may have evolved this way to tend to the fire in order to keep us warm and safe. So, okay, that's kind of an interesting deal. I feel like I've been going through that deal for the last few weeks. It probably does help that I've gotten the chance to do some workouts now that I can actually do a full-fledged sleep deal. But yeah, there were some times where I felt I go there, I'll sleep for 5 hours, and then I wake up for a while, maybe use the restroom, stuff like that, and then go back to sleep for another few. So maybe I'm going back into the medieval deals, so who knows at this point.
Yeah, no, I definitely attempt to get that much sleep. We'll see if that's... I mean, your phone kind of tracks your sleep now, I feel. So the more I don't get that sleep, the more I know it. My phone's I know you're awake. I'm oh my gosh. It's creepy. You know. How do you know? But yeah, I get that deal too, where you wake up in the middle of the night. But it's usually my own fault. Like I left a light on, or I left something. So I guess that would be just like medieval times. Like you knew something needs to happen. You need to go turn something off or stir the fire. So.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Exactly. All right. So I've kind of given like a couple of deals here. So why don't you give us one of your facts or stories or whatever you might have based on these medieval times?
Well, yeah, I've actually been to medieval times before, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see if what night we get. I don't know if you wanted me to preface what medieval times is, like the actual experience.
Well, I kind of know from videos and from photographs and from everything like that, so I kind of got the idea of what's to be expected, but it's still going to be a fun time regardless. I think I've never really been to a show like this where it is going to be just absolutely phenomenal, to say the least. And trust me, guys, we will be taking pictures. We'll be taking some videos. Definitely, we'll be showing you guys the absolute fun time that we're going to be having.
Oh yeah. Well, the stories and stuff that I have is I chose my favorite medieval times movies, so that's what I was talking about. Oh, okay. So they're not my stories. They are stories and shows and movies that I feel represent the Middle Ages very well, and sometimes obviously represent the fantasy world of the medieval ages, which is one of the probably I don't know how to say. I think it's one of the best genres. I think that fantasy in general is all based on the Middle Ages. And by fantasy, I'm talking about like the elves, like Lord of the Rings, obviously Game of Thrones, these giant like elves and dragons and magical wizards and dwarves and halflings and all these great stories are all kind of wrapped around the Middle Ages, and I think that's just really interesting and cool, and I did not research hard enough to figure out why people are so drawn to the Middle Ages, but you can tell by just our stories in general. They're all kind of like the big ones that have all this mystical, magical things are like stuck in those ages of archery and broadswords.
Yeah, honestly, when we just kind of, go into talking about that, I mean, it kind of ties into, like, movies even like Monty Python, where they talk so heavily about medieval times, and it's funny because, they try to preface this on the whole, King Arthur deal, and what's funny is that, there's literally a scene where there's, like, politically correct peasants, and King Arthur, he's doing this deal where he's talking about how he became king, how he got the sword from the Lady of the Lake, and that's how he became king. And basically, they're just saying, like, you can't expect us to believe that you just got this royal, deal from getting a sword from some lady in the lake. That's just insanity. It's just one of my favorite scenes of, like, the entire deal. It's one of those things where they basically do make fun of the fact that it's like, it's just ludicrous that they would try to do something like that, where they would just say, like, oh, well, this woman in a lake gave me a sword, therefore I am a king. It's like, well, I mean, I understand why. That's kind of weird. That's kind of like somebody saying, oh, our president became president because he went to the bog and they were given this, like, little wooden stick. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Just... It is really insane how they just have all these random stories, and I think that's still one of the reasons why we love the medieval times is because of these stories, is because they do spark the imagination. I mean, you definitely mentioned Lord of the Rings, perfect example, because they have the hobbits, they have the elves, they have the dwarves, they have so many of these different characters and different creatures that it does just spark the imagination and make you think, oh man, this would be really cool if this actually happened. It's like, well, some of these things actually did happen, to be honest.
Yeah. It's interesting because I just wanted to, like, I was just, like, trying to wonder, like, what actually is, like, the medieval times or the Middle Ages. And it's interesting. They say that the Middle Ages are literally from 476 to 1492, which we all know 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So it seems like the Middle Ages are just early Europe. and it really is, though. Like, it is just Europe going to battle, being Europe. Before they crusaded, before they, like, went out to find new lands, they just lived and died horribly in Europe.
Well, it's kind of funny you mentioned that, because that's another fact that's actually on here, is the, it says here, it's like the number 3 deal. It says, in medieval Germany, married couples could legally settle their disputes by fighting a marital duel. But to even the field, the man had to fight from inside a hole with one arm tied behind his back, and the woman was free to move and was armed with a sack filled with rocks. So, for those that think that,
Whack-a-mole.
I was about to say, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, if people are going to say, like, well, women always had it rough, it's like, well, in this medieval time, no, the woman had the advantage and literally could probably kill the husband with just a sack full of rocks while he's stuck in a hole with his arm tied behind his back. So, I think it's one of those few times where I'm like, okay, they actually give me a fact about the fact that, hey, women still had it rough, but at the same time, when it came down to it, they basically had an advantage when it came to battles. And I think that, some people say, like, oh, but that's not fair, because that's basically saying the woman is basically weak. It's like, just shut up. There's a lot of other women who'd be like, sweet, I get an advantage. Boom. Just that deal, but...
They would probably do that, but I would tell you this. If the woman won, she would probably be called a witch and burned at the stake.
Oh, my gosh.
Just
No.
telling you.
They have to weigh...
exactly what would happen.
They have to weigh the same as a duck in order to be a witch. Have you not seen Monty Python?
She's a witch.
It's a fair cop. Oh, my gosh. Another favorite scene of that. And just the kind of crazy stuff where they just think, like, oh, well... they talk about just random shit that goes on. It's again, medieval times are amazing. But here's something
medieval times would suck,
but
okay. I think it's great to read about.
Okay.
I would never want to live in the medieval times.
Okay, so let me rephrase that. There are some parts of the medieval times that's awesome, but yes, I do agree. It does suck. But suck is really bad, because here's something that's actually very interesting, and this kind of going to take us away from the comedic deal to kind of a very, very, very dark deal here. So, on this list I have murderers in medieval Ireland were given to the deceased family as slaves if they failed to pay a hefty fine to buy their freedom. The family could legally murder them themselves if they so choose. So I'm just looking at that, I'm thinking, wow, that's honestly a very cruel thing to do, but at the same time, back during that day, it actually does make a lot of sense to actually let the family have the option of whether the person goes or not. So that's just one of those things where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's very brutal, but at the same time, I totally, I'm totally for that idea. Literally just be like, okay, so you literally basically tried to kill his kids, you're going to be basically put off here. You know what? It's kind of one of those things where, maybe the murderer, earns the freedom, maybe he earns redemption for doing these horrible crimes, or maybe it's just over. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, if anybody kind of has a say, it has to be the person who has been affected by this. That's just me getting off of this dark subject. I know it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, wow, this is a very gray area, but yeah, that's just me when it comes to this fact.
Yeah, no, that sounds just like the medieval times. They're like, well, he killed people, so you now have the right to murder him very brutally. Then we will all watch him get murdered. And they're like, ooh, yeah.
Ooh, ah, yay.
Ooh, whoa, use the pitchfork. Like, nice. Like, no, like, that sounds like medieval times to me, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's like, you murdered my swallow. You murdered a bird? I'm sorry. Well, you're in trouble. Alright, so, what do you got for us next?
Like, do you want me to talk about movies? I don't know if you want me to talk about movies.
No, yeah, definitely do. Go more in depth.
I went on and I got my favorite medieval times, or Middle Ages-esque movies that I really enjoyed throughout, my time. One I think that might be overlooked by a lot of people, and I guess it's kind of like a Cinderella story, which I'm not a huge Cinderella person, but I think Ever After is a great, Prince medieval time story. Have you ever seen Ever After?
I've heard it's like the best version of Cinderella, and it's on my list. It is on my list of movies I need to watch.
It's Drew Barrymore, one of her pivotal first lead grown-up actress role, and it's basically about it's a very long movie, but it's about her dad marrying, and she lives with them. She has stepmom, stepsisters who aren't all that bad, but the stepmom isn't very good, and she just wants to live her life, and she goes to a ball and meets the prince and has Leonardo da Vinci as her fairy godfather or something, and they attempt to fall in love, and things happen, and it is very much a Cinderella story, but with knights and fighting and princes and Leonardo da Vinci. So it's just all really cool, really fun. Probably one of the best Middle Ages movies, I think. One of them, obviously, of all time. There's a lot of other princely movies that we probably know about. But I think that's one of my all-time favorites, is Ever After.
Oh, yeah. From what you're telling me, I definitely do need to watch that. And there's other people that be like, oh, man, you gotta see this movie. It's amazing. It's like, I'm totally convinced. I'm definitely going to be putting this on my list. I think I might even try to watch it next week sometime. But we'll see. But yeah, combining, the medieval times, the classic story, and also Leonardo da Vinci, because why not? Just sounds like a very well done, sounds like a very fun movie.
Yeah, and when you go back to when the Middle Ages technically are, that was the Renaissance was in that time. A lot of things came out of that time. When you think it's 1,000 years, basically, is the Middle Ages. So I don't technically know why it's the middle, if it was 400 to 14, but maybe they think that 3,000 is going to be the end, I guess.
Yeah. So here's going to be kind of an interesting one, because now we're going to be talking about some of the things that happened, especially during battle of medieval times. And this one says that the origins of driving on the left side go back to medieval England, where knights would ride the horses on the left side of the road. So if they encountered any enemies, their sword hand would be on the correct side. Nearly all countries that drive on the left now were once English colonies. So for those that are kind of curious as to why, especially when you go to England, you notice that they are driving on the other side than on what we usually, for us, we go on the right side. They go on the left side. That's kind of where it all, comes from. So that's kind of actually cool that you see that kind of fact, and you kind of now understand, well, why is it that these people, go this side now? And why is it that we have to readjust our brains now to think, oh, hey, we have to now look this way first before going this way? It's like, that's because, that's always how they've been. And I'm not going to, criticize. I'm not going to judge them for it. It's just how they're raised and how they're just kind of stuck with tradition. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know why we do the other way, but we do. It would be much easier if there was just a across the world type of thing, which there is, the metric system that the United States is like, nah, no, I don't want to. And I think it really was us just giving the middle finger to England, being like, ha, we're going to do whatever we want on this side of the ocean, ha ha ha. And we've never gone back. And now it's almost like maybe the world needs to do what we're doing. Hashtag America controls the media. Ah!
Right. Oh my gosh. So here's another fun fact about, especially during battles. So You know how, like, in some medieval castles, they have those, like, stairwells that kind of, like, do a spiral kind of deal?
Yeah.
So, they have here that stairwells ran clockwise, so attackers coming up the stairs had their swords in their right hands against the wall's interior curve, which made it hard for them to swing their swords. Defenders had their swords on the outside wall, which meant more room to swing. So that's actually one of those things where I thought, okay, that's actually a smart strategy. But they probably didn't count on the fact that there's some knights that are indeed left-handed, and they probably do it like that. But at the same time, I think that it still gives them an advantage, because if these guys are not left-handed, then they're probably going to end up getting a nice, flesh wound from the person that's literally right on top of the entire stairwell. But honestly, that's really cool to hear that kind of deal.
Yeah, there was a lot of tactical things and within the Middle Ages, because like they didn't have the guns and stuff, so everything was like hand to hand, like archery, which makes it very appealing to like authors and people who are writing stories, because it's like technology sometimes ruins stories, I would say. And by ruins, I mean like we know plot holes. It's like, why didn't you just call? Like, what's a story that like? Oh, I know there's a story like instantly. You're like, why didn't you just tell the truth, or why didn't you just stop lying about this? The story would be over. Like those type of movies, or like, why didn't you just call the police? Call 911. Everybody has a cell phone. Like, you win, you're done. You don't have to deal with it anymore. Like those plot holes ruin things, but in Middle Ages, it's like, oh no, he has a cold. Corner him, kill him now, or he'll kill us all. Like the cold, no, or something, and then he's just like, I'm going to die now.
Right.
So, like, and like, Monty Python, like the flesh wound, like it's just a flesh wound. Like every flesh wound event, like did kill everyone. So,
right, exactly.
All you had to do was get a cut, and then you're dead.
And it's just really crazy, because you kind of mentioned, the fact that they like to, just exaggerate the stories and stuff like that. Here's actually a fun exaggeration of a story. I don't know if you've heard of the Iron Maiden. It's like a medieval torture device.
Yeah.
Well, apparently it never actually existed for that purpose. It was created by a museum curator when he added spikes to a female form sarcophagus. So apparently this was just one of those things where somebody just thought, oh, this would look cool if we put spikes in there. Oh, let's just say that it was that it was actually something that they did in the medieval times. So we had a myth busted it on that part, but at the same time, I could still see that being oh gosh, that would just be a horrible way to go.
Their torture chambers were crazy.
Oh gosh, I know. My lord.
Let's just pull the people in half. Let's see if we can twist their bodies in half. Like, what?
Right. And even some of the crazy things where they just decide, one of the best ways to torture was, like either waterboarding or even just taking like a brand and just putting it right up against their skin until they finally reveal the truth. And even then, they're probably going to be dead in like a matter of hours anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh gosh. And now we're going into the dark, medieval times suck kind of category.
Well, if you didn't think it sucked, you should. If you thought medieval times is a cool time, you're living in fantasy land. Because yes, D&D is fun. I play every other Wednesday to where my character is in the Middle Ages types of scenario. If I was ever living in that scenario, I would die. My character is not a real thing, and she has a lot of magic. I don't.
Oh my gosh, yes. Alright, do you have any other, facts or stories, whether it's, movies, stuff, related to that? Because I feel like I'm just going to go through, majority of this list for, the rest of the episode.
You can totally do whatever you want. I picked out some movies to recommend that people might want to watch if they're infatuated with the Middle Ages. Some of the best entertainment, I would say. I love dragons. I've already told you guys about Dragonheart, but it is a great one about a king needing the heart of a dragon and being connected to dragons. It's very fun. The Dragonheart series in general is relatively entertaining, and it's a good one. Game of Thrones, huge, like, middle-aged type of series that everybody hated the ending of, apparently, but, like, whatever, I'm not that obsessed with this series to be like, oh, screw the ending. I'm like, whatever, it ended. Series lasts too long, and then they start sucking, and you're welcome. That's what Game of Thrones is. But yeah, it was great. It literally, if you want to know how dark the Middle Ages are, watch Game of Thrones. If you're like, whoa, it's the most violent, sexual, weird thing, like, yeah. Hashtag Middle Ages.
Hashtag Middle Ages.
And then anything King Arthur-wise is amazing. I think one of my best favorite animated King Arthur stories is Quest for Camelot. Amazing, really good, great songs. It's definitely more kid-friendly, but it's really fun. So those are just a few of my top 5 type of middle-aged series, movies, animations that I think people might be interested in watching and getting a very unrealistic version of what the Middle Ages was and what Game of Thrones is on.
Oh, well, there you go. So here's kind of another interesting fact in here. So this was kind of something that happened before the 1600s. I guess this is during the medieval times. So a game of chess could actually be won by capturing all the pieces of your opponent, leaving a king bare, a style of play known as annihilation. In the medieval period, players considered it nobler to win by checkmate, so annihilation became like a half win for a while until it was abandoned. Honestly, that's kind of one of those things where it's like, huh. So for a while, you could just literally go after every single part of the opponent until, nothing was left but the king, which literally is kind of what some people like to do. They like to go for the annihilation deal. Jeez Louise, I'm kind of looking at this, so I'm just like, man, even the game of chess is one of those games that could be so dark and so brutal. And
I mean, they didn't actually kill someone, though.
No.
I mean, when I play chess, I'm attempting to kill everything. Like, that to me just sounds like, yeah, that's what chess is.
Oh man, and honestly, I will say this from experience: chess is the ultimate game of like, gotcha. To where there's some points where you're just like, yes, I got this piece. Oh, I didn't see you had a knight. He's right here, just ready to go. Just, yeah. Oh, man. It can be a fun game, but it also can be another one of those games that you can be very competitive about, folks. So definitely try it, but don't get obsessed with it, because it will probably make you somebody's enemy at this point.
You'll get in arguments and fights, and then it's not good.
If we wanted arguments and fights, we played Mario Party.
Oh gosh, yeah.
The earlier versions, not the later ones that kind of got crazy. So here's kind of an interesting one. So the act of giving the key to the city is a continuation of a medieval practice, where the cities would be locked at night, which actually I do believe that. But someone given the key could come and go as they please as an honor for something great done for the city. So kind of one of those things where if a knight was to, rescue. So if we'll use kind of like the the Dragonheart deal as an example. Let's just say maybe like the knight slayed a dragon and they were given the key to the city. He could come and go to that key as much as he pleases. And we've seen a lot of TV series and a lot of movies that have done this deal where it's just like, oh, this person's going to be given the key to the city, and it's just one of those things where it's like, but we're not locking anything. It's just a random giant key that you guys just decide to make for reasons, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
But to have that kind of honor, to basically being told hey, we're giving you a key to the city, so that way you can come and go as you please. Thank you for your service. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, so there is meaning behind having that key, and I would love to have seen like a knight have like this giant keychain of like 20 different cities, and just try to figure out, okay, which one is for this city, which one is for this city, because they all seem the same.
That's hilarious, because yes, I could see that too. Like, oh man, I forgot what is the shape of this one?
And that's when they decide, okay, we need like a special marking for a certain key, so that way we know, oh, this is, this city, we can put in for this key. There we go, we are good. Oh my gosh.
Hilarious.
Oh man! So I've apparently discovered the first medieval keychain that could have been at this point. So because you have to believe that there were so many knights that probably did that deal where they're just like, "Yo, let's save this city. I have a key for that. Let's save this city. I have a key for that." At this point, no, actually, our oldest keychain was just those. Oh, geez, what are they? The little like side bags, you know, where they would contain their like money and stuff like that. That was the keychain. I guarantee it.
Satchel.
Oh man, it was. Oh, hey guys! Medieval ages didn't believe that the Earth was flat, and apparently in the 1800s, that's when people are just like, no, it is flat. So, as dark and as miserable as it probably did, I at least was not dumb enough to believe that the Earth was flat. So,
they probably believed it was just stagnant. This is all the Earth. We do not go anywhere else. We are scared. God told me not to move, so I'm just sitting here. Like, that's literally what they were.
I can see something.
So I wouldn't say that they were smarter. I would say that they didn't try.
Right. Let's see, what's another fact here that we got? The most prolific serial killer in Middle Europe. Oh, okay. Let's go into this dark deal. And possibly ever was executed by having all of his limbs broken and threaded through the spokes of a wheel. Oh, gosh. He was kept alive and conscious on the wheel for 9 days by a daily dose of a strong drink. Okay, then.
So they drugged him to stay alive.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
And, wow. That's interesting. How many people did he kill, or it doesn't say any of
that? It doesn't say on here. It just says the most prolific serial killer. That's about it. So, literally, this guy was too extreme to be given to the affected families. They're just saying, you know what, we're going to just put him on a wheel, and he's going to survive by just doing this strong drink deal. Oh my gosh, that's just... that is another brutal deal. My lord. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, if we do meet the queen, then I'm just going to have to make sure I'm on my best behavior and not end up having this, be my punishment if I disrespect her.
Oh, jeez. Yes.
So apparently there is no evidence that there were chastity belts in the medieval times, which I honestly do believe. And okay, so I could kind of factually kind of back this up. They kind of did hint on the fact that chastity belts were a thing during Robin Hood Men in Tights. Yes, I'm bringing up a Mel Brooks movie because it's awesome and it's hilarious. Definitely watch it. Where Maid Marian has like this chastity belt, and there is no proof of that apparently during the medieval period. So it's basically safe to assume that either some guys got a little handsy, I'm not going to go into the dark realm of that, or basically they were very respectful and they waited until marriage to have their special night at wedding day, stuff like that. But oh well, so I guess that there's
they did it.
Yeah. So yeah,
they had sex whenever they wanted to have sex. Hashtag STDs. Hashtag plague. They were riddled with diseases, and most of them were sex.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I'm not going into that one. So there is one in here, and I'll send you a picture after the show of something where I'm just like, oh, okay, that might be one that's too far for this show. Infamous Iron Maiden. Okay, let's bring back the Iron Maiden. So the infamous Iron Maiden of the medieval period was never used and was actually a fake of considering the misappropriated medieval bits and pieces back to blah blah. Okay, so that was just another thing that's saying, hey, no, that's just that's whatever. Oh, okay, here we go. This is going to be kind of an interesting one. So this is actually going to be kind of a pop culture reference. The chanting in Star Wars iconic song Duel of the Fates, which honestly is probably the best thing to come out of Phantom Menace. I mean, I know some people might say, what about Darth Maul? What about, this deal? It's like, you can't deny the soundtrack for the movie was absolutely amazing. But everything else just kind of either fell flat or just, you know what, this is just going into a debate. Never mind. So the chanting from this song is not a gibberish alien language, but a Sanskrit translation of a medieval Welsh poem. Other chants in the Star Wars series make use of the Sanskrit as well. So okay, that's actually kind of cool. So in a weird way, the so some of the stuff from Star Wars does kind of go back to medieval times, but even something a bit older into the Welsh deal. Oh, that's actually really cool. So for those,
Yeah.
so Star Wars is basically medieval times in the future. I love it.
Well, that is exactly what I mean. The Knights of the Round Table, Jedi's. Yes, it's very much, and the sword fighting style of the Jedi is very much a broadsword type of movement.
Yeah. But yeah, that was just kind of one of those things that I actually did not even know. And the fact that they mentioned Star Wars in here, I'm just like, okay, I'm invested. I'm interested. See what's this. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have to talk about Phantom Menace again, but hey, it's honestly one of the best songs of the entire series. I mean, a lot of people remember the classic, the Imperial March. But yeah, Duel of Fates is definitely one of those songs that a lot of people remember from the Star Wars movies. So that was really cool. The phrase crocodile tears refers to a medieval belief that crocodiles shed tears of sadness when killing or consuming their prey. I find that hard to believe. I don't think crocodiles are one of those kind of animals that would, be crying when they're, eating something, but it is kind of one of those things where like, okay, maybe this is one of those things that could be a, actual real thing. Who knows at this point? But I find it hard to believe that a crocodile would, shed tears while it's eating. I'm just imagining now like a cartoon where somebody actually did that, where crocodile just is eating something and he's just like, I don't want to eat this. Just...
I would question where they even saw crocodiles. So I would question that fact quite hard. I don't think there were crocodiles anywhere in the Middle Ages, so I don't get that fact at all. Because it's all about Europe. There are no alligators or crocodiles in Europe.
Yeah, okay. No, I definitely do see your points. That is a really, really good point. I don't know. Maybe they just assumed that maybe a crocodile was like a dragon or something. I would believe that, though. If they felt like crocodiles were dragons.
They didn't go anywhere. Like, they would stay, they would stay in Europe. Like, they didn't go anywhere.
Right.
This was when they were attempting to do the Crusades and stuff, but the Crusades were, from Spain to, England. It was, tiny, little... They're like, oh, we went across the world to England. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They didn't know. They didn't know anything, which is totally fine. But maybe some people ventured, because obviously some people attempted to venture into Africa a little bit, and Africa has crocodiles. But maybe that's where dragons came from. I don't know, but I wouldn't think that they would be constantly using any phrase that didn't really have books about,
Yeah, no.
But keep moving on.
All right. Well, okay. So this would be kind of interesting. So the Cathars was a medieval Christian sect that condemned war and capital punishment. Okay. Believed in reincarnation. All right. Two gods of good and evil, and largely endorsed gender equality. That's kind of nice. They were annihilated by the Catholic Church. Oh. Well then. I mean, I was kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, so this kind of is one of those things where it's like, we have these kind of beginnings, it's kind of nice, and it's like, oh, they were basically destroyed by the Catholics. Okay, that went south. I would have figured that maybe they would have had some deal where they got along with everybody, but no, much like a lot of things, they come in, they have their land, and then it gets taken away by somebody more powerful. I think that's probably the best way to put it without offending anybody.
Yeah, there was not almost anyone more powerful than the Catholic Church at that time.
No, I believe that. I totally believe that.
The state happened for a reason. And is it really true? I mean, we have God on our dollars, so...
This is very true. See, oh boy. So, the urn of ginger boys was prized in medieval Europe for making stained glass. Moving on. Medieval period clothes were stored close to the toilet shaft, as the ammonia fumes would kill any fleas. Yeah, but you would also have flies on your clothes. So, well, this is kind of interesting. I think I'm just reading points written right now. It's just like, huh. Okay, so literally we're now getting to the point where it's talking about like food and stuff like that. Let's see, what else we got here? Let's see if you talked about that. Okay, so medieval royal courts had professional... Okay, I'm not kidding. It actually says this. I don't know why. It had professional farters, which I think that it is something different than what I'm thinking right now, that were rewarded with houses and land. The most famous was Roland the Farter in the 12th century, or Pujol, who could shoot water up to 5 feet. Okay, so now I'm getting to the point where it's just like, okay, you're basically making me think of so many different things, and I know I'm a guy, but it's still one of those things where it's like, you hear this term farter, and all I can think about to myself is that, oh, can they just like fart water out of there? Never mind. This is just one of those things where it's like, okay, so this is like the weird court gestures of the medieval courts or something like that. I don't know.
I didn't really hear what they could do.
No, it's really weird. It just doesn't say anything. It just says professional farters, and that's it. So, kick-ass facts. Love the fact that you have all these great deals, but you could be a little more descriptive with what exactly these professional deals do.
Right. And obviously, terminologies and language was much different, so who knows what that meant.
Oh, yes. I mean, back then, of course, when somebody was gay, that meant that they were really, really happy. Honestly, I still think that to this day that still applies, but now people are just taking it as a derogatory term. It's just one of those things where it's like, interesting. But let me see here. I'm trying to think of quickening the spread of the Black Death. So,
yeah.
So I think that that's one of those things where people already think that cats are assholes anyway. But this is just another one of those facts where it's just like, okay, so now we're basically seeing a confirmation that even back then they thought the cats were literally just like the worst thing. And in fact, there's another point in medieval times where cat burning was an accepted practice thought to bring good luck. Oh, gee, I wonder why. It was custom to burn a barrel full of live cats, oh gosh, over a bonfire as people shrieked with laughter while they were signed and roasted. French kings often witnessed it and even ceremoniously started the fire. Well, I mean, of course kings have to do that, but my God, thank the Lord we don't have to deal with that nowadays. I mean, we just kind of put up with them. We're just kind of like, okay, except for like black cats, we'll accept any form of cats, the calicos, the Siamese, the Russian blues, etc., etc., etc. We put up with these. The only ones that really just really get your grind your gears is the black cat, because we know they bring bad luck. There's no denying that.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I do think it's very interesting when you do hear the stories like this, because this is a very true story that they called cats evil. They were killing cats. Then all the people died. Like almost half the population got killed by the Black Death or the bubonic plague, and it's just very symbolic of humanity. Like, we attempt to play God, then we die.
Basically, yeah.
And so, like, that's just what happens. Like, you ruin your ecosystem in any way, we all die, then it needs to happen. Then we were like, oh, shoot, like, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Except the church is like, no, we did it. Catholic Church back in the time was extremely crazy. And that in general, just researching that is amazing. You're like, wow.
It's like
they had a great business. I will give that to them. They had full control over humanity for almost, I would say, almost throughout the whole Middle Ages, almost 1,000 years of total human control. Wow.
Yeah.
if you just go business wise, that was pretty impressive.
Right? And it's kind of crazy because it is kind of like their form of politics, where they're basically just saying, no, we're not doing this to hurt anyone. We're here to help you. We're doing this for your benefit. We're doing this because this is gonna, help you have a better life, and blah 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 blah. So, yeah, religion was definitely something I do remember in the Middle Ages being a huge factor, where they definitely tried to obey the laws as well as keep upright with their religion. It was definitely one of those things where back then you had to stick with this religion, where nowadays you kind of have a choice of which religion you want to practice. But back in the day, if your family was Catholic, you stuck with being Catholic. If your family was Protestant, you stuck with being Protestant. You didn't really cross over.
Are you talking about Middle Ages?
Am I talking about? Well, I thought it was, but I'm guessing I'm totally wrong.
No. If your family was Protestant, you were a witch and you died.
Oh, well.
Hashtag we went across the land to try to practice our own religion. People had to leave if they wanted a different religion in that time, or they got brutally murdered for being a different religion. But that's how you control humanity, is you kill people that are different from you, and that leads to awfulness that also could lead to total control. The Catholics had it down to an art at one time, and they didn't allow people to be able to read. Boom, you got power then. You're like, they can't read what we're writing. We'll just read to them. But I would like to learn. No. If you learn how to read, especially if you're a female, you're a witch. And then they're like, oh, okay, sorry.
Right.
It's crazy. And I'm not going to say that right now the Catholic Church obviously isn't like that anymore in ways. But it's interesting. But yeah, that's a totally different thing. If we wanted to talk about all the fun Middle Age things, like Lord of the Rings and elves and fun stuff that comes from it, that's great. But there's also, it was not a fun time. But knights, I wanted to talk more about knights and stuff. Okay. If you had any facts about that, because that's kind of what we're doing. We're about to go see a knight tournament. Another good movie is A Knight's Tale with the great Heath Ledger, who we all know died, sadly. But that was another great one, of learning about the knights and what they had to do in order to become a knight. And, most knights had to be, celibate, I'm pretty sure. They couldn't take wives. They couldn't do anything except be devoted to their king.
Yeah, no, it is kind of one of those things where some people would think, oh, man, it'd be really cool to be a knight. But, no, there are these kind of, situations where you hear what they have to kind of go through, and it is kind of another one of those situations where I believe you kind of didn't really have too much of a choice in the matter. You had to obey your king. You had to obey people there, and even if you're higher up, that comes with more responsibility, especially if the king dies. Unless there's somebody there to kind of take over, a kid or a relative or something like that. You basically had to be the one that takes over the king's spot. So there's just a lot of just crazy stuff. And I'm actually going to pull up some more facts about the knights, because I only had the medieval time ones. So let me just see here. No, I don't want facts about Knight Rider. Jeez. Let me see here. Anybody who broke the knighthood would be committed a crime against God. Okay, so that I believe. So basically, anybody who broke the knight's oath was basically committing a sin. No female committed to a knight bachelor. Women were always appointed to an order of chivalry. Okay, so I guess you could say that knights were able to have wives, but they had to be appointed to them. It's not one of those things where you could go out and say hey, I like this woman, I want to be with her. No. Unfortunately, I think that when I was in Midnight Summer, it was in that situation where it's Hermia and Lysander, they wanted to be together, but by law, Hermia's father had to lay out that no, you're marrying Demetrius, so you can't exactly try to to be that you can't go with somebody who you love. You have to go with somebody who I approve, who I choose. So, again, another very brutal deal, my lord.
Yeah, wow.
I'm trying to look at some other facts here. I know this is going to be one of those situations where it's like, oh gosh, he's looking for these random facts. It's interesting because, geez, I mean, did you have any other facts about knighthood while I'm kind of looking here?
I mean, I kind of told just like what I basically remember. I could have looked more stuff up, but just in general, they were very devoted to the king, who would be devoted to religion. So the knights were very religious and very bound to God in some way, and that's what a big story that people know, a famous story, is, Joan of Arc, who pretended to be a male knight for a while until she was discovered and burned at the stake. I think she was part of the Spanish type of army, but I'm not 100% sure. But Joan doesn't sound like a Spanish name, so I could have been wrong about that. But just in general, like, no women allowed, didn't even... I'm pretty sure they didn't like knights to take women because showing love and devotion to another thing besides God or your king was like a sin. So it seemed like a very lonely, sad life to be a knight, where you would hope to die young before you got too old, and old being like, 25, that's way too old. And yeah, you would die and you would be holy for it. So good for you, I guess.
Yeah. Right. So here's kind of something interesting is that I've looked up this article from historyhit.com where I guess this French literary historian, Leon Gautier, I believe is his name. I apologize if I butchered that name. He apparently created this 10 Commandments of Chivalry, which I think does kind of reflect a bit on the medieval times. So going to go right through these and kind of, I think it's probably going to be the best way to kind of close this because, I'm a man that believes in chivalry and I'm kind of going to look to see, okay, how do these kind of, reflect on what we know for today. So, number one, they have believe the church's teachings and observe the church's directions. Okay. Number two, defend the church. Number three, respect and defend the weak. Well, that seems a little derogatory. Number four, love your country. 5, do not fear your enemy. 6, show no mercy and do not hesitate to make war with the infidel. 7,
Oh my God.
I know, right? 7, perform all your feudal duties as long as they do not conflict with the laws of God. Number 8, never lie or go back on one's word. Number 9, be generous. I may have said number 9 twice, I apologize. Number 10, always and everywhere be right and good against evil and injustice. So, I mean, a lot of these are still pretty much, practiced today. I think that the number 6 is probably the one where we are. I mean, you heard it from my co-host, mouth. That's probably the one where we're just like, oh, okay, we're going in an interesting direction.
I was just intrigued by the terminology used. I didn't know, but is this actually from the Middle Ages?
This was from his book, La Chevalerie in 1882, so you had to believe that this was something that was based on it, but not 100% probably proven, for all we know.
Infidels sound like something that, I mean, it definitely could have been part of the terminology before, but that's what really struck me. I was like, oh dang, they had that terminology in the Middle Ages, but all in all of those things were exactly how I described the knight, so I'm pretty proud.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I was like, church, king, that's it.
It is kind of one of those things where, we kind of reflect on all the things that have, happened and how we've kind of evolved from these, deals. Obviously, the justice system was definitely different from what we remember it being, and it is one of the systems that is more brutal back then than it is nowadays. Some people might argue that it's more brutal nowadays than it is back then, but I think it's kind of always on the person's perspective on that. How they do laws, how they practice religion, and how people, even, express love. I mean, chivalry, honestly, I think that's one of those things that I'm getting most out of this is that, even though, knights had, to do, war and they had to fight and they had all these rules against them, all these, rules of chivalry that they had to adhere to. That's honestly really cool that they at least had, some class. I mean, I understand that there's probably some knights that literally try to twist these that are just going to be like, defend the weak unless they can defend themselves, then basically kill them. I guarantee you there's some knight that was probably thinking that way. But there were probably some really good knights, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see a good knight this weekend become victorious, because I know that there's like this competition that goes on, and it just seems like it's going to be an absolutely fun time. So that's something that this is kind of morally based on, and we're going to be going in, you guys, just looking to have just a great time. It's going to be an absolutely great deal. I definitely do want to kind of suggest going to your medieval times, and we'll kind of do like a review on it next week's episode. We'll talk about the atmosphere. We'll talk about what we kind of saw in the medieval times, and we'll even talk about the tournament. Now, how did it go for us? Did we come out with a victorious knight, or did we have a losing knight? Who knows? Did we have a knight that we thought, oh hey, he won, but he's kind of a dirtbag? Why? Just or is it a guy that who lost? Oh, but he was such a good soul, though. Just it's just something that seems like I'm definitely going to be highly invested in. But I'm looking forward to doing that. And again, I'm going to be hanging out with my co-host, but definitely check out her Facebook fan page. Leave a like, leave a comment, be respectful about it, and definitely enjoy so much of that. Enjoyed, stuff that I have on my Twitter. Enjoy stuff that we have on our Facebook fan page. And guys, if you get a chance, I did post up on my Facebook fan page, and I'll plug this in again. About a few years ago, we restarted the Game Changer. We did something where we thought, okay, we're going in here kind of, on our own. We broke off from a different network. And one of the things that I did was I posted up a podcast about the one and only Project Amazon, our good friend Sarah. Definitely check out the interview that I had with her. It is honestly one of my favorites when we first started off, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger from there. So definitely see the humble beginnings that we had, and the fact that we had probably one of the best cosplayers, if not one of the best actresses and models in this nation. I will definitely fight people on that. Other than my co-host, of course, because I have to show some chivalry. and guys, definitely check out some of the stuff that they got going on, because honestly, VictoriBelle, you do have some plans in the works, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Oh, yeah, no, there's definitely big plans. I don't want to talk too much about it yet until I've gotten everything solidified for sure. But no, I'm always working on everything. I'm always trying to do more and give more and see if we can entertain and see if people enjoy the entertainment we create. So that's what I'm looking to do right now. But we'll see. We'll see what's going on.
All right, guys. So for VictoriBelle, I've been NateFNGreat. Thank you for joining us here on the Game Changer podcast. It's SummerSlam weekend, but it's also the continuation of the month of celebration that I've decided to name the month of Nathan, because of the fact that it is indeed my birth month, and because I want to make this an entire month of just absolute fun. So definitely tune in tomorrow to some of the great photos and some of the great videos that we are going to have throughout medieval times. It's going to be an absolute fun fest. So thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.